It was the kind of day that seemed ordinary at first, no different from any other. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the street as I drove home, my mind lost in thought. I didn't know that this day, this drive, would change my life forever. The crash happened in an instant. One moment, I was on the road, and the next, everything around me was a blur of flashing lights, twisting metal, and the overwhelming scent of gasoline. The pain was sharp, immediate. Then, nothing. I woke in a place that wasn't like anything I had ever known. It wasn't dark, but it wasn't light either. It was a vast expanse, empty and still. There was no sound, just a profound silence that weighed down on me. My body felt distant, as if I were no longer connected to it, but I knew I was alive, or at least, something about me was. Then, I saw it. At first, it was a shadow, but it grew clearer, taking shape as a figure, tall and radiant, yet not blinding. It was not of this world, and the aura that surrounded it made my very soul stir. This being wasn't here to condemn me, nor to judge me, it was here with a purpose far beyond my understanding. The figure spoke, its voice gentle, but it reverberated deep within me, as though it were speaking directly to my heart. "You are not here by accident," the figure said. "You have come because there is something you must understand. There is something you must know, something that is unfolding around you even now, even as you speak." I wanted to respond, to ask what it meant, but I couldn't speak. The words felt heavy in my chest, as if I could not form them. The figure's presence didn't demand anything of me, it simply existed, and in its presence, I felt both small and comforted. "You have crossed the threshold between life and death," it continued, "but you are not yet meant to stay here. There is still much for you to learn. Much you must understand." I felt a stirring within me, an awareness that something far greater than any physical injury was at stake. I could feel the weight of those words. The figure, standing before me, emanated love, but there was also an intensity in its gaze. Something was coming, something that required preparation, spiritual preparation. "You are going back," it said, its voice like a soft echo. "But you must carry with you a truth. A truth that will not be easy, but one that will guide you through the days ahead. The world you return to is not as you remember it. Forces are at work, forces that seek to change humanity in ways that will threaten their very souls." The figure's words settled over me like a blanket, not frightening but heavy with meaning. It continued, "In the coming years, you will witness changes, technologies that promise safety, convenience, and security. But these will be laced with deception. And as the world embraces these advancements, they will unknowingly embrace their own undoing." My mind swirled. What could it mean? Technology, the world changing. These were abstract ideas. How could they be connected to something as profound as the fate of the soul? The figure seemed to read my thoughts. "There will be a mark, a symbol of control," it said. "A mark that many will accept without question, thinking it a gift, a way to make life easier. But in truth, it will be their undoing." I felt a chill wash over me as the weight of what I was hearing began to settle in my bones. I had heard rumors, whispers, talk of a future where people would be marked, controlled by technology, their lives dictated by systems they couldn't escape. But to hear it from this figure, to feel the truth of it, it was like being plunged into cold water. "The mark of the beast," the figure spoke softly, as if it were an unavoidable reality. "It will appear as something harmless, even beneficial. People will be deceived by its promises. It will seem to offer them the security they crave. But in reality, it will sever them from what truly matters. It will sever them from their souls, from their connection to the divine." I tried to speak, to ask more questions, but no words came. It was as if the very nature of this place, this encounter, required silence. The figure continued to impart truths to me, not through spoken words but through a deep knowing, a spiritual communication that went beyond language. "You will be shown the future," the figure said, "and you must prepare yourself, for it is not just the world that will change. You must change as well." The figure's form began to grow dimmer, fading slowly as though it were dissolving into the air. "You must build your faith," strengthen your spirit, and prepare your heart, it said, its voice now barely a whisper, but still deeply felt. The journey you are about to undertake will not be easy. You will face doubts, struggles, and the temptations of convenience. But you must stand firm. It is your soul that is at stake. The figure was gone, but its presence remained with me, like a gentle hand resting on my shoulder. I wanted to reach out, to ask more, but the moment had passed. Slowly, as though the world itself was breathing, I felt myself drawn back. My consciousness flickered, and I knew I was returning. The crash. The pain. The world I had left behind came rushing back into focus. I gasped for air, my body stiff and aching, but something was different. The world was no longer as it had been. I didn't know yet how or why, but I knew, deep down, I had just witnessed something far greater than I could understand. The encounter had changed me. The words, the visions, the warnings, they were etched into my very being. I had crossed over, and what I had learned was a burden I would carry with me from this moment onward. The world was not as it seemed. I had seen the dangers, the subtle manipulations, and I had felt the urgency of what was to come. It was no longer a question of if the mark would come, it was only a matter of when. And when it did, many would accept it without understanding its true cost. But I had been given a glimpse. A glimpse into a truth that no one else could see. And I would carry that truth with me, even if the rest of the world remained blind. The world around me seemed to shift and ripple as I stood there, trying to understand the depth of what I had just experienced. My body ached from the accident, yet my mind buzzed with questions I didn't know how to ask, but that the divine figure seemed to answer anyway. As I stood there, trying to regain some sense of normalcy, I felt the presence of the figure again. This time, it was not speaking to me directly, but I could feel its wisdom enveloping me, like a protective cloak. It was as though it had prepared me for what was coming next, because without warning, visions began to unfold before me. The world I knew, the one filled with familiar comforts, routines, and technology, suddenly felt distant, as if I were looking at it from the outside, as if I were no longer a part of it. The visions started slowly, almost imperceptibly. First, I saw a small group of people, seemingly happy, gathered in what looked like a modern, high-tech environment. The hum of machines, the flicker of digital screens, it all felt so comfortable, so familiar. But then, something began to shift. At first, it was subtle. People began to accept little conveniences, things that seemed harmless at first, like digital payments and biometric scans. These were things I had used, things we all used. But in the vision, the systems were expanding, growing more intricate, more inescapable. I saw the world slowly transform. More people joined the digital fold. They were drawn to the promises of ease, of a future that would be better, simpler. There was talk of eliminating poverty, solving problems with technology, bringing about a utopia where no one would go hungry or suffer. People were told they could have everything they wanted: safety, security, peace. The mark, though unseen at first, began to materialize in small ways, quietly integrating itself into every facet of society. It was not a single event but a gradual process. And then, it became clearer. People began to accept this mark because of what it promised. The vision showed families, individuals, and even communities eagerly choosing this new technology, this new way of life. They did not realize that in choosing it, they were surrendering something far more precious than their privacy or their autonomy. They were surrendering their connection to the divine, their ability to stand firm in their faith. The vision shifted, and I saw faces, hundreds, thousands, drawn into this system. But the light in their eyes had dimmed. There was a void in them. The mark had promised them everything they wanted, but it had delivered nothing but emptiness. Those who had embraced it seemed to become shadows of their former selves, their souls stripped away by the very convenience they had chased. I could feel the sorrow, the regret, as though their very spirits were crying out. Their connection to the divine had been severed, and there was no turning back. The more they relied on this system, the more it eroded their ability to see the truth, to discern the difference between right and wrong. They had become slaves to convenience, to comfort, to the world's promises. The figure appeared beside me again, its presence a balm to my soul amidst the chaos of the vision. The mark will not force itself upon them, the figure explained, its voice calm and steady. It will come quietly, in small ways, unnoticed at first. It will seem like a gift, an advancement for the world. But in reality, it will be a curse. A curse that slowly, methodically removes the ability to choose the divine path. It will promise salvation through convenience, but what it offers is destruction. I felt the weight of those words deep in my heart. The people in the vision had chosen this path, not because they were evil, but because they were deceived. They thought they were embracing a better world, a safer world, a world of ease. They did not realize that in doing so, they were turning away from what truly mattered, their souls. Many will fall for the illusion, the figure continued, because it will look so appealing. It will seem harmless. The promise of a better life, the promise of security, will be too enticing. They will not see the dangers hidden beneath the surface. I watched as the vision progressed, and I saw the consequences become more severe. As the mark spread, it wasn't just an individual choice, it became a societal norm. Those who refused it were ostracized, excluded from the conveniences of life. They were deemed backward, foolish, even dangerous. Society would slowly begin to accept the mark as a necessary part of life, and those who resisted would find themselves increasingly isolated. But the real cost of accepting the mark wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The divine figure explained this to me as the vision unfolded further. Without their awareness, without their willingness to discern the truth, they will have willingly embraced their own downfall, the figure said, its tone heavy with sorrow. The mark will rob them of their ability to choose freely, to follow their true calling. And in doing so, they will lose what is most precious. As I watched the world bend and change, I felt a deep sadness for those who were drawn into the system without understanding the consequences. It wasn't just a loss of freedom or privacy, it was the loss of their connection to God, to the very essence of who they were meant to be. The system would become all-encompassing, and those who accepted it would be tethered to it, unable to break free once they had crossed the threshold. The figure's presence was a steady comfort, but it was clear that this was not just a vision of a distant future, it was a warning. You must prepare, the figure said. The world will not stop for you. The decision will not wait. Those who are spiritually weak, who do not understand the gravity of what is happening, will fall. But those who remain vigilant, those who continue to seek the truth and prepare their hearts, will be protected. I stood in the vision, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle upon me. This wasn't just an abstract future, it was coming. The world was already moving in that direction, one small step at a time. And soon, the line between the sacred and the profane would be blurred beyond recognition. It wasn't just about technology or convenience. It was about a choice that would define everything. Would people choose the mark, thinking it would make their lives easier? Or would they choose faith, even when it was hard, even when the world told them they were foolish? The vision ended as suddenly as it had begun, and I found myself standing again, back in the quiet, still space with the figure. But now, I knew that what I had witnessed wasn't just a future to fear, it was a call to action. The question now wasn't just about what others would choose, it was about what I would choose. The divine figure remained by my side, its presence a constant comfort, but also a source of deep reflection. The visions from before had been unsettling, but they were only the beginning. I could feel that there was more to learn, more truths to grasp. The world, as it was changing in ways I hadn't fully understood, subtle, quiet changes that seemed so innocuous at first, so harmless. And yet, they were leading toward a precipice. The figure spoke again, its voice soft, yet full of conviction. You have seen the future. But now, you must understand how it will come to pass. People will not be forced into the mark. No, it will be something they choose. Something they willingly accept, because they will not see it for what it truly is. I watched as the vision unfolded again. This time, I saw individuals, families, communities, all seemingly going about their daily lives. There was no urgency in their actions, no sense of impending disaster. They went to work, cared for their families, and enjoyed the comforts of modern life. It seemed like any other day in the world I had known. But there was an undercurrent to it all, a subtle, insidious shift that began to take root. The first signs of the mark's influence were small, little conveniences offered here and there. A simple chip to replace a wallet, a biometric scan to open doors, a system that tracked health metrics and rewarded good habits. At first, people were skeptical. They questioned the implications of these advancements, but slowly, over time, the convenience outweighed the concern. After all, these things made life easier. People didn't need to worry about lost wallets, forgetting passwords, or getting sick. Everything could be tracked, monitored, and managed in a single device. It was all so seamless, so efficient. It made sense, didn't it? And so, they began to adopt these technologies, one by one. It seemed harmless at first, nothing more than a harmless convenience, a mere tool to enhance life. The people in the vision weren't evil. They were simply living their lives, unaware of the slippery slope they were descending. They didn't see the danger lurking just beneath the surface. The figure's voice returned, calm yet heavy with sorrow. You see, it will not be the overt demands of a tyrant that will make people choose the mark. It will be the promises of ease, the allure of convenience. The world will tell them that this is the only way to live a peaceful, productive life. Those who reject it will be seen as outdated, even dangerous. They will be marginalized, labeled as obstacles to progress. The vision shifted again, showing the gradual erosion of free will. As more people embraced the mark, it became harder to distinguish between those who had chosen it and those who had not. It wasn't an obvious change at first, nothing dramatic. But with each passing day, the world began to feel different. The air was thinner, the space between people growing wider. It was as if the very fabric of society had been altered, and no one noticed until it was too late. In the vision, those who resisted the mark were shunned. They were labeled as troublemakers, as people who couldn't keep up with the times. There was no room for dissent in this new world. Those who wanted to live outside the system were pushed to the margins, isolated, and increasingly irrelevant. The promise of security was so appealing that no one could resist for long. Even those with the strongest faith began to falter. It was the subtlety of the mark's hold that made it so dangerous. It didn't force itself upon anyone, it simply made everything else seem impossible. I saw the faces of the faithful, struggling with the choice. They weren't being persecuted with violence or force. Instead, they faced a slow and steady pressure, a pressure to conform, to give in. The world didn't care about their faith. It cared about results, about efficiency, about progress. The divine figure spoke again, and its words were filled with both love and sorrow. They will not understand the consequences of their choices. People will be deceived, thinking that they are merely choosing a better way of life. But what they don't realize is that the mark will gradually separate them from the divine, from the very essence of who they are. It will replace their trust in God with trust in the system. Their faith will be tested in ways they cannot imagine. I felt the weight of those words. It wasn't just a matter of convenience or control, it was a matter of faith. The more people embraced the mark, the more they would lose sight of what truly mattered. They would come to rely on technology to solve their problems, to provide for them, to protect them. In doing so, they would forget the one source of true security and salvation, their faith in God. The vision deepened, and I saw families torn apart by the pressure to conform. Parents, children, spouses, each struggling with the decision, each silently questioning what was right. Those who held fast to their beliefs found themselves isolated, cut off from the world they had once known. But the deeper the divide grew, the stronger their resolve became. They knew that they had to stand firm, no matter what the world told them. The figure was beside me once again, its presence gentle yet filled with an undeniable authority. Those who choose the mark will not understand what they are losing until it is too late. And those who resist will face great trials. They will be tested in ways they cannot predict. Their faith will be tried like never before. I understood now. It wasn't just a question of whether or not to accept the mark, it was a question of who they were willing to become. Would they become slaves to convenience, to the systems that promised peace but delivered emptiness? Or would they choose to stand firm, to trust in their faith and in God, even when the world around them seemed to be falling apart? The deception of the mark lay in its subtlety. It wouldn't come in the form of a violent imposition. It would come as a promise of comfort, security, and ease. And in the end, that promise would cost more than anyone could have imagined. It would cost their very souls. As the vision faded, I found myself standing again, next to the divine figure. But now, I knew something deeper, something more urgent. The world wasn't just heading toward this decision, it was already on the path. The question wasn't if the mark would come, but how people would respond when it did. Would they be ready? Would they know what to choose? The divine figure's voice was soft but filled with certainty. It is not too late. Those who stand firm in their faith, who seek the truth with open hearts, will be protected. The choice will not be easy, but it will be the most important one of all. And with that, I knew that the journey was just beginning. The atmosphere around me shifted as the divine figure spoke again, its voice softer now, yet imbued with a quiet urgency. You have seen the dangers that lie ahead, the slow erosion of trust in what is good and true. Now, you must prepare. Not just in your heart, but in your mind and hands. Spiritual preparedness is vital, but so too is practical readiness. In these coming days, your strength will not only lie in your faith but in your ability to live in a way that reflects the truths you now understand. The weight of those words settled in me, filling me with a sense of responsibility I hadn't fully grasped before. It wasn't just about resisting the mark, it was about creating a life that was separate from the world's growing dependence on technology, a life rooted in faith, resilience, and community. The divine figure's presence deepened, almost as if it were guiding me towards something more specific, something that could be done here and now. Build your faith, the figure continued. Let it be the foundation upon which all else is built. But also, build your communities. The days of solitary faith are behind us. Now, more than ever, people will need to find strength in one another. You must create places of refuge, places where others can come to find hope, truth, and support. These will be your sanctuaries, not just of the spirit, but of the body. As the figure spoke, a new vision unfolded before me. I saw small communities, groups of people living together, helping one another. They weren't isolated from the world entirely, but they had built themselves into pockets of strength, independent from the growing technological systems. I watched them grow food, repair tools, share knowledge. There was no reliance on the systems that others were so quickly adopting. The mark had no hold on these communities. They were resilient, self-sufficient, and, most importantly, faithful. But it wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving. The divine figure continued, its voice full of wisdom. Teach those around you to grow in faith and knowledge. Help them understand that true power lies not in the convenience of machines, but in the strength of the spirit and the hands that work to build something good. Knowledge of the earth, the body, the soul, these things will be your weapons against the darkness. The word struck me with profound clarity. It wasn't enough to simply reject the mark, I had to actively prepare in a way that would sustain me and those around me. People would need skills, tools, and practical wisdom. But just as importantly, they would need a faith that was not fragile, a faith that could withstand the challenges ahead. In the vision, I saw people learning together, crafting, growing, and building lives that didn't depend on external systems for survival. They were independent but deeply connected to one another through faith. As the divine figure spoke, I realized that the time to act was now. The visions I had seen weren't far off, they were already beginning to take shape. The shift toward technology was already happening. People were slowly adopting the tools that would lead them to accept the mark. It wasn't just a distant future, it was the now. And if people didn't start building their spiritual and practical preparedness now, they would be left behind, overwhelmed by the tide of technological advancement that promised security but would deliver enslavement. You must lead by example, the divine figure instructed. Show others the way to live outside the system, to build faith-based communities that can survive, thrive, and remain faithful even as the world falls into chaos. It will not be easy, but it will be worth it. I felt the weight of those words. The task seemed monumental. It wasn't enough to quietly live out my faith anymore. I had to share it. I had to show others what it meant to stand firm, to live practically and spiritually in a world that would soon test everything they believed. There would be no shortcuts, no easy answers. It would take work, hard work, but it would be the work that could save lives, both physically and spiritually. The figure's presence enveloped me, and I knew it was not just speaking to me in that moment, but to all those who were willing to listen. You must also prepare yourselves physically, not just spiritually. The body and soul are connected, and when one suffers, so too does the other. Learn practical skills, grow food, learn to fix things, make shelter, and heal. In these simple acts, you will find a deeper connection to the divine. A vision came to me once more, this time showing the practical side of life. I saw people sowing seeds, tending to their gardens, mending their clothes, fixing their homes. It was as though the very act of creating something with their hands was an offering to God. These acts of daily living became a form of worship. It wasn't the grand gestures that mattered. It was the small, quiet moments of faithfulness and labor that formed the backbone of this new way of life. The divine figure looked at me, its eyes filled with a deep, enduring love. The world will try to pull people away from these truths, away from simple living, away from faith. But those who prepare themselves now will have the strength to stand when others falter. And they will be the ones to lead others to the truth, even as the darkness deepens. I nodded, feeling the weight of the task ahead of me. It was not just about rejecting the mark. It was about creating something new, something that could resist the pull of the world's conveniences. I had to be ready, and I had to help others prepare. It would require time, energy, and sacrifice, but in the end, it would be worth it. I could see now that this preparation, spiritual and practical, was not just a matter of survival. It was a matter of redemption. The figure spoke one final time before the vision faded, leaving me with its words etched in my heart: prepare, and in your preparation, you will find peace. Peace, not as the world gives, but as I give, peace that passes understanding, peace that can withstand any storm. As the vision dissolved, I stood in awe of what I had seen. The journey was not over. It was just beginning. The divine figure's presence remained with me, though now it felt as though we were standing on the threshold of something immense. The air around us shimmered with a gentle light, a light that seemed to rise from within the very core of my being. It wasn't bright in the way the sun is bright, instead, it was a soft, penetrating light, one that revealed everything, yet comforted as it did so. I could feel its warmth in my chest, in the center of my heart, where all the pain and uncertainty had once been. That place was now filled with peace. Now, you understand, the figure said, its voice calm, but with an underlying strength that resonated deep within me. You have seen the darkness that lies ahead. The world will continue to grow colder, and the path to salvation will be more difficult for many. The pull of convenience, of technology, will lead people astray. They will be led to believe that the comforts they seek are worth the cost of their souls. My heart tightened at the thought. I had witnessed firsthand how technology's promises of safety, security, and convenience had deceived countless souls. I had seen the gradual steps leading to the mark, the seemingly harmless innovations, the quiet acceptance of systems that, at first, appeared to be only solutions. But I had also seen the consequences. I had seen people who once lived with a connection to something greater, something divine, lose that connection for the illusion of ease. But despite all the dark revelations, the divine figure's voice brought a gentle reassurance. Though the world may grow darker, do not despair. There is always the possibility of revival, of redemption. Even in the deepest darkness, a spark of light can shine brightly. And those who carry that light, those who prepare with faith, will be the ones who can help ignite that spark in others. The words washed over me like a tide. I had been so focused on the coming trials, on the deception that would sweep across the earth. But now, I understood. The darkness was not the end of the story, it was a part of it. The light was still present, even in the most hopeless of times. It was in the hands of those who chose to hold on to faith, to refuse to let the darkness consume them. There would always be the possibility of revival, of a return to truth. You are called, the divine figure continued, to be one of those who will carry that light, to be a beacon for others who are lost, to be the one who stands firm in the storm. You will not be immune to the difficulties ahead, but you will be prepared. Your faith will be your anchor, and your community will be your strength. The weight of the task ahead felt both daunting and liberating. It was not about saving the world, only God could do that. But it was about living in a way that could inspire others to find their way, to remind them of the light they could still carry within themselves. It was about leading by example, showing others that even in the darkest times, the possibility of revival was real. I felt a deep sense of responsibility stir within me, but also a great sense of peace. The work ahead would not be easy, but it would be meaningful. In the face of the coming trials, there would be no room for complacency. I could no longer simply watch from the sidelines, I was part of the solution. Each small act of faith, each moment of strength, would contribute to something greater than myself. It wasn't just about survival, it was about creating a space where faith could flourish, where people could learn to thrive again, even when the world seemed to be falling apart. The figure's presence grew stronger, filling me with warmth and a renewed sense of purpose. Know this, the figure said, those who remain faithful will be protected, even as the world grows darker. You will be tested, but your faith will be your shield. The world may try to tear you down, but you will stand firm, for your foundation is not of this world, it is built on something eternal. I could feel the truth of those words settle deeply within me. There would be no guarantee of comfort or ease in the future. I would be called to endure hardships, to stand firm when others faltered. But I would not be alone. The faith that had sustained me in that moment, in the presence of the divine, would continue to sustain me when I returned to the world. Remember, the figure added, though the trials will be many, they will not last forever. The darkness will pass, and the dawn will come. The time of renewal is coming, and those who endure will be part of that new beginning. With those words, I felt a sudden shift, as though I were being drawn back, pulled away from this realm of light and peace. I knew what was happening, I was returning to my body, to the world I had left behind. But as I was pulled back, I felt a deep sense of calm and strength. The mission I was being given was clear. My purpose had never been more urgent. It was time to prepare, to build communities of faith, to teach others the importance of spiritual growth, and to help them prepare for the coming challenges. As I returned to the physical world, I felt the weight of the divine message settle within me. There was so much to be done. But I was no longer afraid. The divine figure had shown me the path forward, had given me a glimpse of the strength that faith could provide. I was ready. I awoke, my body groggy from the crash, but my heart full. The world was not hopeless. It was not beyond saving. I had been given the gift of this knowledge, not just for myself, but for others. The darkness might come, but the light was stronger. And I was ready to carry that light forward. The journey had only just begun, but I no longer faced it with fear. I faced it with hope, with faith, and with a renewed sense of mission. The light would shine, even in the darkest places. And I would be a part of that light.